The fluorescent lights of Walter Reed Medical Center hummed their tired song at 6:30 in the morning, casting long shadows across the sterile hallways of the cardiology wing. The overnight shift was ending, and exhaustion hung thick in the air like morning fog over the Potomac. Commander Raleigh Thorne stood 5'4" in her pale blue scrubs, auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun that would have made her drill instructors proud. To everyone around her, she was just another new nurse, young, eager, still learning the ropes of military medicine. A nobody named Ray Rivers who'd been at Walter Reed for 7 weeks now. 7 weeks of bedpans in blood pressure cuffs. 7 weeks of playing the role of the inexperienced newbie who couldn't quite get the IV placement right on the first try. 7 weeks of invisible investigation. But underneath those scrubs, pressed against her chest, hung 2 sets of dog tags. One set was black anodized steel, non-reflective, the kind issued only to special operations. The other set was old, tarnished copper, worn smooth by decades of handling. Both told stories. Both held secrets. Raleigh moved through the morning routine with practiced efficiency, checking vitals on the veterans in her assigned wing. Most were Gulf War soldiers, men in their 50s now, their bodies breaking down in ways that didn't make sense. Organ failures, neurological problems, tumors in places tumors had no business being. 11 of them had died in the last 8 months. All of them had served in Operation Desert Storm. All of them had received the same mysterious medication in their final weeks, a drug called Serum Protocol 7 that appeared in no FDA database, prescribed by only one doctor. Dr. Edmund Vance, 68 years old, silver-haired with the kind of patrician features that belonged in a country club, not a military hospital. He'd been a contract physician for the CIA from 1985 to 2003, specializing in what the file euphemistically called biochemical interrogation. Chemical torture, in plain English. And now he was head of rehabilitation services at the most prestigious military hospital in the country. Funny how that worked. Raleigh had been sent here by Naval Intelligence 6 months ago, after a pattern analyst noticed something nobody else had seen. The deaths looked natural on paper: heart attacks, strokes, liver failure. But when you laid them out on a timeline, when you looked at the common threads, the pattern screamed murder. She'd volunteered for this assignment the moment she saw the first name on the list, because tucked away in the classified files, marked as a consultant to Desert Storm operations, was a name that had haunted her for 36 years. Captain Nathaniel Thorne, her father. Officially killed in action, Afghanistan, 2003. Except Raleigh's mother had never believed it. Diana Thorne had spent 7 years searching for answers. 7 years of phone calls to government offices that went nowhere. Letters to congressmen who offered sympathy but no action. Freedom of information requests that came back so redacted they were useless. The grief in the not knowing had eaten her alive from the inside out. In 2010, when Raleigh was 21 and in her junior year at the Naval Academy, her mother had taken a bottle of sleeping pills and never woken up. The suicide note was 3 pages long, but only one sentence mattered. Your father didn't die the way they said he did. Find the truth, Raleigh. Make them pay. Raleigh had carried that note in her wallet through BUD/S training, through Hell Week when she'd wanted to quit 1,000 times, through deployments to Syria and Iraq where she'd earned her reputation as one of the most capable operators in SEAL Team 5. Now, at 36, she was a commander with 3 Purple Hearts and a chest full of classified commendations she could never talk about. And she was finally close to the truth. The morning stretched on. Raleigh made her rounds, played her part, kept her eyes open and her mouth shut. At 10:15, she ducked into the women's staff locker room for a quick shower. The overnight shift left you smelling like antiseptic and old coffee, and she had another 12 hours ahead of her. The locker room was empty, thank God. Raleigh peeled off the scrubs and stood under the scalding water, letting it pound against shoulders that carried more tension than they should. For just these few minutes, she could stop being Ray, the nervous nurse. She could remember who she really was. Commander Raleigh Thorne, SEAL Team 5, call sign, Phantom. The hot water ran over her left shoulder, over the tattoo she'd gotten the day she graduated from BUD/S, the SEAL Trident. Eagle clutching a pistol, trident, and anchor. The mark that said she'd survived Hell Week, that she'd earned her place among the warriors. She was reaching for her towel when she heard it. The slam of the locker room door, the frantic slap of shoes on tile. A voice, urgent and afraid. "Ray! Ray!" Vivian Graves burst around the corner. The head nurse was 62 years old, with iron gray hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She had the kind of face that had seen too much, survived too much, the weathered features of a woman who'd spent 30 years in military medicine. Vivian never panicked. She was panicking now. "Code Blue, room 307. Sergeant Merrick's crashing." Raleigh's training kicked in before conscious thought. She grabbed her towel, wrapped it around herself, and ran. No time for scrubs. No time for anything except the primal imperative drilled into every SEAL. When a brother goes down, you move. Water dripped from her hair as her bare feet slapped against the cold linoleum. Behind her, Vivian's voice echoed through the corridor, calling for the crash cart. The third floor erupted in controlled chaos. Nurses rushing, the rattle of medical equipment being wheeled at speed, and Raleigh, wearing nothing but a towel, sprinting toward room 307 like her life depended on it. Because someone else's life did. She hit the doorway at full speed and took in the scene with a tactical assessment that had kept her alive through 5 combat deployments. Room 307 was packed. 2 doctors, 3 nurses, all crowded around the bed where Sergeant Cole Merrick lay motionless. The heart monitor showed a flat line, that terrible electronic scream that meant death was winning. Cole, 45 years old, Desert Storm veteran, SEAL Team 3. They'd crossed paths during a joint training exercise 3 years ago. Good operator, good man, the kind of teammate you'd want at your 6 in a firefight. Dr. Edmund Vance stood at the bedside, hands on Cole's chest, performing compressions. But Raleigh saw it immediately, saw what nobody else in the room had noticed. The technique was wrong, deliberately wrong, too shallow, wrong rhythm, hands positioned incorrectly, an inch too high on the sternum. Vance was going through the motions, putting on a show, but this man wasn't trying to save Cole Merrick. He was watching him die. Something cold and sharp crystallized in Raleigh's chest. The same icy clarity she'd felt in Syria when the ambush went sideways, when time slowed down and every detail became brutally, perfectly clear. Move. The word came out harder than she'd intended, cutting through the organized chaos like a blade. Vance's head snapped up, irritation flashing across those aristocratic features. "Nurse Rivers, this is not—" "Move!" Raleigh shoved past him. Her towel caught on the door handle, and she felt it slip, felt the cool air hit her bare shoulder. But she didn't stop, couldn't stop. Cole was dying, and every second mattered. Her hands found his chest, found the correct position. 2 inches above the xiphoid process, heel of one hand, other hand on top, elbows locked. The lessons from combat medicine training were burned into her muscle memory so deep she could do this in her sleep. 30 compressions, exactly 100 beats per minute. The Bee Gees played in her head, that ridiculous mnemonic device they'd used in training. Stayin' alive, ah ha ha ha, stayin' alive. It would have been funny if a man's heart wasn't stopped. She counted, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hard enough to compress the chest 2 full inches. Hard enough to crack ribs if necessary, because broken ribs were better than dead. At 30, she tilted Cole's head back, pinched his nose, sealed her mouth over his. 2 breaths. His chest rose and fell. Good seal, good technique. Back to compressions. 30 more. Hard, fast, relentless. Breaking someone's bones to restart their heart. That's what it took sometimes. Behind her, someone gasped. Raleigh didn't need to look to know what they'd seen. The towel had slipped further when she'd leaned forward for the rescue breaths. Not far enough to be indecent, but far enough. Far enough to expose the dog tags hanging around her neck. 2 sets of them, one black, one copper, both catching the harsh, fluorescent light, both telling stories she'd spent 7 weeks hiding. And on her left shoulder, now partially visible where the towel had fallen away, the tattoo, the seal trident in all its violent glory, the mark that couldn't be faked, couldn't be explained away. The room went silent except for the sound of her compressions and her breathing. 30, 2 breaths. 30, 2 breaths. On the 4th cycle, Cole's heart monitor jumped. A blip, then another, then a rhythm, weak and thready but there. His heart was beating again. Raleigh sat back on her heels, chest heaving, hands still positioned over his sternum in case she needed to start again. Cole's eyes fluttered open, confused and scared and alive. "Easy," she said softly, professionally. "You're okay, Sergeant, we've got you." Only then did she pull the towel back up, covering the tags in the tattoo. But the damage was done. Every person in that room had seen. The 5 witnesses to the moment her cover died. Dr. Vance stared at her with something between shock and fear in his eyes. The nurses looked confused, trying to process what they just witnessed. And in the corner of the room, standing perfectly still with eyes like a hawk tracking prey, was a man Raleigh had noticed during her rounds, but never spoken to. Colonel Garrett Blackwood, 68 years old according to his visitor badge, though he carried himself like a man 20 years younger. Silver hair cut military short, steel gray eyes that missed nothing. He wore civilian clothes, but the bearing was unmistakable. This was a warrior, had always been a warrior, would die a warrior. He was supposedly just a volunteer visitor, an old veteran who liked to spend time with wounded warriors, offering comfort and companionship to men dealing with the aftermath of service. But those eyes told a different story. Those eyes had seen combat, had made hard decisions, had looked death in the face and not blinked. Those steel gray eyes met Raleigh's for exactly 3 seconds. She saw calculation there, assessment, recognition. Then Colonel Blackwood turned and walked out of the room without a word, moving with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime staying ready. Raleigh knew, with the absolute certainty that comes from years of trusting your instincts in life or death situations, that her cover was blown. The question was, by who and for what purpose? 45 minutes later, showered and dressed in fresh scrubs, Raleigh stood at the nurse's station filling out the incident report for Cole's Code Blue. Her hands were steady as she wrote, but her mind was racing through scenarios and contingencies. The normal protocol would be to call her handler at Naval Intelligence, report the compromise, request extraction. She'd be pulled out within hours, the investigation handed off to someone else, and she'd spend the next 6 months in a different assignment while this one went cold. But Raleigh hadn't spent 7 weeks building this cover, hadn't spent 36 years carrying her mother's grief, just to walk away now. She was close. The files in Vance's office, the pattern of deaths, the connection to her father, all of it was within reach. A young orderly approached the desk, barely old enough to shave, nervous energy radiating off him like heat. Nurse Rivers, this is for you." He handed her a piece of hospital stationery, folded once. Then he scurried away like he'd delivered a bomb and didn't want to be nearby when it went off. Raleigh unfolded the note. The handwriting was old school, the kind taught to men who'd learned penmanship before computers existed. Strong, decisive strokes. "Commander Thorne, room 512, 5th floor. We need to talk. Blackwood." Her real rank, her real name, and an invitation that was really a summons. Raleigh checked her watch. Her shift didn't end for another 6 hours, but nurses took breaks. She grabbed her coffee mug as a prop and headed for the elevator. Room 512 was listed in the hospital directory as an administrative office. But when Raleigh entered, she found it was actually a converted patient room. The medical equipment had been removed, replaced with a simple desk and 2 chairs. No windows, and critically, no security cameras. She checked the ceiling corners immediately, the way she'd been trained. Always know your exits. Always know who's watching. Colonel Blackwood sat behind the desk, still wearing his visitor badge, but the way he held himself had changed. This wasn't a kindly old veteran anymore. This was a commander in his war room. "Close the door," he said. Raleigh did, but she stayed near it. Exit strategy. Always have an exit strategy. "You can drop the act, Commander, or should I call you Phantom?" The use of her call sign hit like a physical blow. Only people deep inside naval special warfare would know that. She hadn't used it in civilian company in years, hadn't spoken it aloud outside of secure facilities. Raleigh's hand moved instinctively toward her waistband, where her Sig Sauer would normally be. But of course, nurses didn't carry weapons. She was unarmed, compromised, alone in a room with a man who knew things he shouldn't know. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, the cover story automatic even though they both knew it was pointless. Blackwood smiled. It wasn't a warm smile, but it wasn't hostile either. It was the smile of someone who'd played this game 1,000 times before. "I was SEAL Team 2, 1975 to 1995, he said. "Served in Grenada, Panama, made colonel before I retired. I know a fellow frogman when I see one, especially one who does picture-perfect combat CPR while half naked in front of 5 witnesses." He leaned forward, those hawk eyes never leaving her face. "I've seen those dog tags you're wearing, black steel, non-reflective, the kind they issue to special operations. And the old ones, the copper set that's been worn smooth. Those are vintage from the 70s or 80s. They mean something to you, something personal." Raleigh said nothing. She was running scenarios, calculating odds, deciding if this man was a threat or an asset, or something more complicated. "Relax, Commander," Blackwood said, reading her body language the way an old operator could. "If I wanted to compromise your mission, I'd have told Vance, not invited you here." He paused, letting that sink in. "You're investigating the deaths, the 11 veterans who've died in the last 9 months, all Desert Storm, all under mysterious circumstances." It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact delivered with absolute confidence. "What makes you think that?" Raleigh asked, not confirming, not denying. "Because I've been investigating them for 9 months myself." Blackwood opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder, the kind that gets that way from photocopies of photocopies, from documents gathered over months of careful, dangerous work. He slid it across the desk. "I'm the one who contacted Naval Intelligence 6 months ago, asked them to send someone. I just didn't expect them to send someone so young, or so good at pretending to be incompetent." Raleigh picked up the folder, flipped it open. Inside were medical records, death certificates, service records. 11 men, all SEAL or Ranger, all dead from supposedly natural causes. Heart attacks, strokes, organ failures, but all of them had served in the same operation, Operation Desert Storm, 1991. These men were all part of the initial special operations push into Iraq, Blackwood said. His voice had gone quiet, heavy with something that might have been grief. "I knew some of them, served with a few. Good operators, good men." He pointed to one of the files. "Staff Sergeant Marcus Williams, age 55, died of sudden cardiac arrest, no history of heart disease, ran marathons until 6 months before he died." Another file. "Lieutenant Commander James Rutherford, liver failure, never drank after leaving the service. Liver was destroyed like he'd been a chronic alcoholic for decades." Another. "Gunnery Sergeant Anton Blake, stroke. He was running ultra-marathons. His cardio was better than mine, and I can still do a 10-mile ruck march." Raleigh studied the files, her trained eye picking up the pattern Blackwood had seen. Different causes of death, but the same endpoint, and the same doctor's signature on every death certificate. Dr. Edmund Vance, she said. The same Dr. Vance who was doing CPR wrong when you burst in. The same Dr. Vance who was a contract physician for the CIA from 1985 to 2003, specializing in biochemical interrogation. Blackwood's voice hardened, which is a polite way of saying he knew every drug, every chemical, every poison that could be used to torture or kill. And now he's head of rehabilitation services at the most prestigious military hospital in the country. Funny how that works. Raleigh closed the folder, met Blackwood's eyes. What's your angle in this, Colonel? Why investigate? Why call in naval intelligence? For the first time, something shifted in Blackwood's expression. The professional mask cracked, and underneath was something raw and painful. Because my daughter works at Langley, CIA analyst. 3 months ago, she called me at 2 in the morning, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Said she'd stumbled across files she wasn't supposed to see, files about Desert Storm veterans being systematically eliminated. His voice went rough. Before she could tell me more, before I could get to her, she disappeared. Officially, she's on extended leave, but I know my daughter. She wouldn't just vanish, not without telling me. He stood up, walked to the wall where he'd pinned a map of Walter Reed. Red X's marked 11 different rooms where men had died. Yellow circles marked 9 rooms where veterans were still alive, still receiving treatment. So I started digging, found this pattern. 11 dead men who all knew something, all participated in the same operation. Something worth killing for, even 34 years later. Blackwood turned back to face her. I'm sorry about your daughter, Raleigh said quietly. She meant it. Whatever else this man was, he was a father in pain. She knew that particular agony intimately. Skylar, he said. Her name is Skylar. She's 42, smart as hell, dedicated. She believed in the agency, believed in the mission, and they took her because she asked the wrong questions. He stepped closer. You have the authority and resources I don't, Commander. The backing of naval intelligence. But you don't know this hospital like I do. You don't have 9 months of groundwork already laid. His eyes locked onto hers. We work together, we might actually save the 9 men still alive. And maybe, just maybe, we find out what happened to Skylar. What do you say? Raleigh considered. Every instinct screamed that this was a trap, that trusting anyone outside her chain of command was a violation of every protocol she'd been taught. But those same instincts, honed through years of combat, told her Blackwood was genuine. A father seeking justice for a daughter who'd been disappeared for asking questions. Just like Raleigh's mother had asked questions. Just like those questions had driven her to suicide when the not knowing became unbearable. There's something else you should know, Raleigh said. This isn't random for me either. She pulled out her phone, brought up a photo she'd carried for 36 years. A family picture from 1989. A young couple holding an infant. The man wore a Navy uniform with a sealed trident on his chest. Strong jaw, confident smile, the look of someone who believed he was invincible. My father, Captain Nathaniel Thorne, he served as an advisor to Operation Desert Storm. Officially, he was killed in action in Afghanistan in 2003. She met Blackwood's eyes. But my mother never believed it. She spent 7 years searching for answers before the grief and the PTSD killed her. She took her own life in 2010, leaving me a note saying my father didn't die the way they claimed. Raleigh's voice went cold, hard as rifle steel. 3 weeks ago, I hacked into Vance's personal email, found a file marked Thorn Protocol. Whatever they're doing, whatever they're covering up, my father knew about it, and I think they killed him to keep him quiet. The two warriors looked at each other across the desk, both hunting ghosts, both seeking justice for people they'd lost, both willing to burn the world down to get answers. Then we do this together, Blackwood said, partners. Partners, Raleigh agreed, but I lead. This is my mission. Roger that, Commander. They spent the next hour going over everything Blackwood had discovered. He'd been thorough, methodical, patient in a way that spoke to decades of intelligence work. The pattern was undeniable once you knew what to look for. All 11 dead men had received the same medication in their final weeks, a drug called Serum Protocol 7. It wasn't in any FDA database. It wasn't prescribed by any doctor except Vance. And every single patient who'd received it had died within 2 weeks. It's not medication, Raleigh said, studying the chemical breakdown Blackwood had somehow obtained. It's an execution method, designed to mimic natural causes. Agreed, but why? What did these men know that was worth killing them for? That's what we need to find out. And the only way to do that is to access Vance's private files. The real ones, not the sanitized versions in the hospital database. Blackwood pulled out a key, old-fashioned brass, the kind that hadn't been common in decades. His office, 5th floor, East Wing. I've been acquiring access over the past few months. Security here is good, but not that good when you know what you're doing. Raleigh checked her watch. 9:47 p.m. When? Tonight, 2 a.m. Minimal staff. Security does rounds at 1:45 and 2:30. Gives us a 45-minute window. 45 minutes wasn't much. But Raleigh had completed missions with tighter timelines. I'm in, but we need a contingency plan. If this goes sideways, her phone buzzed. Once, then again, then a third time in rapid succession. The emergency alert pattern. Someone from Naval Intelligence trying to reach her urgently. She pulled it out, checked the screen, 3 missed calls from her handler, and a text message. Abort mission. Extract immediately. Cover compromised. Response team inbound. Raleigh showed it to Blackwood. He read it, then looked at her. What are you going to do? She thought about her mother, dead at 52. Thought about Skylar Blackwood, disappeared for asking questions. Thought about 11 dead veterans and 9 more who might be next. Thought about her father, whose name appeared in Vance's files under protocol, which meant termination, which meant murder. I'm going to finish what I started, she said. She typed back a single word, negative. Then she powered down her phone completely, pulled the battery, and set both on Blackwood's desk. Can't extract me if they can't find me. We've got until they send the Marines looking, which gives us maybe 18 hours. Blackwood smiled, and this time it was warm, genuine. The smile of one warrior recognizing another. Your father would be proud of you, Commander. My father's dead, Raleigh said flatly. But even as the words left her mouth, something whispered in the back of her mind. A doubt, a hope she'd buried so deep she'd almost forgotten it existed. What if her mother had been right? What if Captain Nathaniel Thorne hadn't died in Afghanistan in 2003? What if he was still out there, somewhere, waiting for someone to find the truth? Let's get to work, she said. The clock on Blackwood's desk read 10:23 p.m. 5.5 hours until they broke into Vance's office. 5.5 hours until everything changed. Commander Raleigh Thorne, SEAL Team 5, call sign Phantom, allowed herself a cold smile. The hunt was on. At exactly 2 a.m., the 5th floor of Walter Reed Medical Center was as quiet as a tomb. The skeleton crew of night nurses worked their rounds 3 floors below. Security had just completed their 1:45 sweep and wouldn't return until 2:30. The hallways were empty, lit only by the dim glow of emergency lighting. Raleigh and Blackwood moved through the shadows like the operators they were, decades of training making them nearly invisible. They wore dark clothing, soft-soled shoes, and carried nothing that would reflect light or make noise. Blackwood had the key. Raleigh had her lockpick set, just in case. The 5th floor East Wing was administrative territory. During the day, it bustled with bureaucrats and paper pushers. At night, it was a ghost town. Vance's office was at the end of the corridor, corner position with no windows. The brass nameplate on the door read, Dr. Edmund Vance, Chief of Rehabilitation Services. Below it, smaller letters, by appointment only. Blackwood slid the key into the lock. It turned smoothly, well-oiled, perfectly maintained. The door opened without a sound. They slipped inside and Raleigh closed it behind them, engaging the lock. Blackwood pulled out a small penlight, keeping the beam low and directed away from the door. The office was obsessively organized. Diplomas arranged in perfect rows on the wall, medical textbooks sorted by height, a desk so clean it looked like a museum display. Filing cabinet, Raleigh mouthed, pointing. While Blackwood kept watch at the door, listening for footsteps, Raleigh went to work on the cabinet lock. It was older than the electronic systems on the office door, a standard pin tumbler that yielded to her picks in under 2 minutes. The drawer slid open with a whisper of metal on metal. Inside were patient files, organized alphabetically, standard stuff. But in the very back, hidden behind the legitimate records, was a separate folder. Red ink on the tab. 2 letters and 2 numbers that made Raleigh's blood run cold. LZ-79. Lazarus, 1979. She pulled it out carefully, set it on Vance's desk and opened it. The first page was a roster, 50 names, each with a service number, rank, and unit designation. Delta Force, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, Marine Force Recon, the cream of special operations in 1979. Next to each name was a color code, red for deceased, yellow for active monitoring, green for living. 45 names were marked red, 5 were marked green, with handwritten notes next to them. Current location, last known contact, threat assessment. At the top of the page in block letters, Project Lazarus Alpha, classified eyes only. Below that, a mission designation, Operation Eagle Claw, Iran Hostage Rescue, April 1980. Raleigh felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Operation Eagle Claw, the failed mission to rescue American hostages from Iran. 8 servicemen had officially died when helicopters crashed in the desert. The operation had been a disaster that helped cost Jimmy Carter the presidency. But according to this file, there had been 50 special operators involved, and 45 of them were now dead. She flipped to the next section, medical records, chemical formulas, test protocols, and a document that made her hands shake. Project Lazarus. Initiated September 1979. Objective: development of combat endurance enhancement through biochemical modification. Test subjects: 50, selected from special operations units. Chemical compound: classified. Expected outcome: 400% increase in stamina, 80% reduction in pain response, accelerated healing. Actual outcome. The words were stamped in red ink across the page. Catastrophic failure. 45 subjects deceased within 18 months. Program terminated. Except it hadn't been terminated. Raleigh flipped further. Project Lazarus Beta. Initiated January 1989. Authorization: Deputy Director Marcus Flynn, CIA. Military Liaison, Undersecretary Gerald Ashford, Department of Defense. Objective: restart enhancement protocol with improved chemical stability. Test subjects: 500, Desert Storm deployment. Timeline: December 1990 to February 1991. Current status: the stamp was newer, dated just 3 months ago. Stage 4 elimination protocol active. Elimination protocol. They weren't just covering up a failed experiment. They were actively murdering everyone who knew about it. Raleigh pulled out her phone, the one she'd powered down earlier. She turned it on just long enough to photograph every page, working as fast as her hands could move. 47 pages. Chemical breakdowns, authorization documents, kill orders signed by Marcus Flynn himself. 30 seconds. Blackwood whispered from the door. She grabbed the physical folder, shoved it inside her jacket. If they couldn't photograph everything, they'd take the originals. Let Vance and Flynn try to explain where the evidence went. They slipped out of the office, Blackwood locking it behind them. The hallway was still empty, but Raleigh could hear footsteps now, echoing up from the stairwell. Security making their rounds, early. They moved fast but quiet, taking a different route back. Through a supply closet, down a service corridor, past the kitchen where the morning prep crew was just starting to arrive. They separated at the third floor, Blackwood heading to the visitor parking lot, Raleigh back to the nurse's locker room. She was supposed to shower, change, act like she just finished her shift. But when she pushed through the locker room door, 6 people were waiting. Vivian Graves stood in the center, flanked by 5 men in tactical gear. Not hospital security, private military contractors, the kind with dead eyes and trigger discipline that spoke to serious training. And Vivian wasn't holding a clipboard anymore. She was holding a Glock 19, pointed directly at Raleigh's chest. "The folder, Commander, hand it over." Raleigh's hand was already inside her jacket, fingers wrapping around her own concealed weapon. She'd retrieved it from her locker earlier, strapped it to her waistband under the scrubs. A Sig Sauer P226, loaded with 15 rounds of 9mm hollow points. 6 hostiles, 15 rounds. Bad odds, but not impossible. "How long have you been working for Vance?" Raleigh asked, buying time, calculating angles. "Since the beginning. Since 1979, when I was a combat nurse assigned to the first test group. I administered Protocol 7 to all 50 operators." Vivian's face was hard as stone. "We were trying to save lives, Commander. Make our soldiers stronger, more resilient. How were we supposed to know it would kill them 30 years later?" "You knew," Raleigh said flatly. "That's why you're killing them now, to hide what you did." "Last chance, Commander. The folder." Raleigh made her decision. She threw the folder toward Vivian, using that split second of distraction to draw her weapon. But Colonel Garrett Blackwood was faster. He came through the door behind the contractors like a vengeful ghost, his own pistol already firing. 2 shots, 2 bodies dropping before anyone could react. The locker room erupted in chaos. Raleigh dove behind a row of lockers, returning fire. Her training took over. Breathe, aim, squeeze, center mass, always center mass. Another contractor went down, a red flower blooming on his chest. Blackwood was moving, using the tactical principles taught to SEALs for 50 years. Never stay still, make yourself a hard target, every shot counts. His shots were precise, controlled. This wasn't some retired officer playing at being young again. This was a man who still had it, who'd kept his skills sharp even after leaving service. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. Raleigh counted rounds. She had maybe 10 shots left. Blackwood, probably the same. And Vivian's team was backing toward the exit, trying to create distance. Then Raleigh's phone rang. In the middle of a firefight, with bullets ricocheting off tile and the smell of cordite thick in the air, her encrypted phone was ringing. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. 434 area code. Virginia. Against all logic, she answered. "Little busy here," she gasped, firing twice more. The voice on the other end was male, aged but strong, calm despite the obvious sound of gunfire in the background. "Raleigh, sweetheart, north stairwell, 3rd door on your left, service tunnel. I've got the other end secured. Run, now." That voice, God, that voice. She knew it like she knew her own heartbeat. Knew it from childhood memories that should have faded but never did. Bedtime stories, lessons on how to swim, a deep laugh that made everything feel safe. "Dad? Move, little phantom, trust me." Raleigh looked at Blackwood. "North stairwell, go." They ran, laying down covering fire as they moved. Vivian and her remaining men pursued, but cautiously. They'd lost 3 already and weren't eager to lose more. The stairwell door was exactly where the voice had said. They burst through, Raleigh jamming a fire extinguisher under the handle to buy precious seconds. It wouldn't hold long, but it didn't need to. The service tunnel was dark, narrow, lit only by emergency lighting. They ran through it, their footsteps echoing off concrete walls. Behind them, the sound of the door being forced open, shouts, orders being barked. The tunnel ended at a heavy metal door with a manual release. Raleigh hit it hard, and they spilled out into a loading area behind the hospital. A black SUV sat there, engine running, driver's door open. And leaning against it, silhouetted in the pre-dawn light, was a man Raleigh hadn't seen in 36 years. Except she had seen him. She'd seen him in old photographs, in the picture her mother kept on the mantle, even after the suicide. She'd seen him in her own reflection every time she looked in a mirror and recognized the shape of her jawline, the color of her eyes. Captain Nathaniel Thorne, Navy SEAL, her father. He was 75 years old now, silver hair and beard, lean in the way of men who'd spent their lives staying ready. He wore jeans and a Navy jacket, and when he straightened up from the SUV, she saw the same bearing, the same confidence, the same warrior's stance she remembered from childhood. "Hey, Phantom," he said softly. "Took you long enough to find me." Raleigh couldn't speak, couldn't move. 36 years of grief and anger and determination, and it all shattered in this single moment. Her father, alive, standing right in front of her. "Dad," she managed to whisper. "We'll have time for reunions later, sweetheart. Right now, we run." He glanced at Blackwood, and something passed between the two old warriors. Recognition. Respect. "Colonel Blackwood, good to see you're on the right side." "Captain Thorne," Blackwood replied, his voice thick with emotion. "We thought you were dead." That's what they wanted everyone to think. "Now get in." Behind them, Vivian and her team burst from the loading area. Shots fired. A bullet shattered the SUV's rear window, spraying safety glass across the back seat. But Nathaniel Thorne was already moving, the driver's door slamming shut, tires screaming as he gunned the engine. They fishtailed out of the loading area and onto the street, putting distance between them and their pursuers with every second. For 5 minutes, nobody spoke. Nate drove with the precision of someone who'd done 1,000 extractions under fire, taking back streets in residential neighborhoods, constantly checking mirrors for pursuit. Finally, when he was satisfied they weren't being followed, he pulled into an abandoned industrial park and killed the engine. Only then did he turn to look at his daughter in the rearview mirror. "I know you have questions." Raleigh stared at him, at this ghost who wore her father's face. Her hands were shaking. The adrenaline dump from the firefight was hitting her now, combined with the emotional earthquake of seeing him alive. "Questions?" Her voice cracked. "Dad, you've been dead for 22 years. Mom killed herself because she couldn't handle losing you. I grew up thinking you were gone. And you were alive the whole time?" The pain that crossed Nathaniel's face was worse than any physical wound Raleigh had ever inflicted in combat. "I know. God, Raleigh, I know. If I could have done it differently, if there had been any other way," his voice broke. "But if I'd stayed dead properly, if I'd cut all ties, you and your mother would have been safe. The moment I came back, the moment I made contact, they would have killed you both to get to me." "What are you talking about?" Raleigh demanded. "Who would kill us? Why?" "The CIA, specifically the people running Project Lazarus." Nathaniel pulled out a tablet, brought up files that made the ones from Vance's office look like children's homework. "In 1979, I was one of 50 operators given an experimental enhancement drug, Protocol 7. They told us it would make us superhuman, help us succeed in the Iran hostage rescue mission." He showed them medical reports, autopsy results, classified memos stamped with CIA seals. What they didn't tell us was that it was based on Soviet experiments from the 1960s. Experiments that had failed catastrophically, killing every single test subject within 2 years. Blackwood leaned forward, studying the documents. "By 1981, my teammates started dying. Organ failures, brain tumors. things that made no sense for men in their prime. I started investigating, made the connection to the drug they'd given us. I found the Soviet research they'd based it on, found out the CIA knew it was lethal, and gave it to us anyway. So you were going to expose them, Raleigh said slowly. I was scheduled to testify before a congressional oversight committee, black budget accountability hearings. They couldn't let that happen. Nathaniel's jaw tightened. So they arranged for me to have an accident, training exercise gone wrong, helicopter crash, except I'd been expecting it. Some of my teammates who were still alive, we'd been comparing notes, putting pieces together. We knew they were coming for us. You faked your death, Blackwood said. Had friends in the community help me. Other Protocol 7 victims who knew they were on borrowed time anyway. We made it look real. Closed casket funeral. Your mother got my flag, my benefits, everything. He looked at Raleigh, and there were tears in his eyes now. I watched you from afar. Watched Diana drink herself into oblivion because she couldn't handle the not knowing. I saw her deteriorating, saw the grief eating her alive, and it killed me not to be able to help. His voice dropped to a whisper. But if I'd revealed myself, they would have used you both as leverage, or just killed you outright. So I stayed dead. Let her think I'd abandon you, let you grow up hating me, because that was better than you being dead. Raleigh felt tears burning behind her eyes. All those years, all that pain. Her mother's descent into alcoholism and depression. The suicide note that had driven Raleigh to become a SEAL, to find answers, to make someone pay. And her father had been alive the whole time, watching from the shadows, carrying guilt that would have broken a lesser man. Mom thought you'd left us, she said, her voice barely audible. She told me you were a coward who ran away. I know, and I'll carry that guilt until the day I die. He showed them more medical reports, his own, which, according to my doctors, should be in about 6 months. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer, kidneys failing, the Protocol 7 side effects, 45 years in the making. Jesus, Blackwood breathed. I'm dying, Raleigh, just like the other 499 victims. That's why I'm done hiding. I'm going to burn down everyone responsible before I go. And now that you're involved, now that they know you're investigating, we do this together. Raleigh looked at this man who was her father and a stranger, both at once. 45 years he'd lived in the shadows. 45 years of sacrifice and solitude and unimaginable guilt. How many others, she asked, how many Protocol 7 survivors are still alive? From the original 50 in 1979, 4, including me. From the 500 they dosed in Desert Storm, 43. He pulled up more files. Most are too sick to fight, but I've got 3 men from my original team who are willing and able. Warriors who have nothing left to lose. They've been with me for years, waiting for the right moment to strike back. Then we get them, Raleigh said, and we finish this. Nathaniel started the engine again. I've got a safe house in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Remote, defensible. We can regroup there, plan our next move. As they drove away from Washington, D.C., leaving the city lights behind, Raleigh stared at her father's profile in the driver's seat. Still strong, still capable, but underneath she could see it now. The illness eating away at him. The cancer that Protocol 7 had planted in his cells 45 years ago, now finally claiming its due. Dad, she said quietly, I became a SEAL because of you. Because I wanted to understand what you'd done, who you'd been. I wanted to make you proud, even though I thought you were dead. Nathaniel's hand reached back, found hers, squeezed. Baby girl, I've watched you your whole life. From the shadows, from a distance, but I was always there. His voice was thick with emotion. Naval Academy graduation, I was in the back row. BUD/S completion, I was in the parking lot, watching through binoculars when they pinned your trident. The day you made commander, I was so proud I almost blew my cover just to tell you. You were there, Raleigh whispered. Always. Nathaniel pulled out his phone with one hand, keeping the other on the wheel. I wrote you emails, one every year on your birthday. Never sent them because it wasn't safe, but I wrote them. He handed the phone back. Raleigh saw the folder labeled To Phantom and opened it with trembling fingers. 36 emails, one for each year since her birth. She opened the first one, dated her first birthday in 1990. My darling Raleigh, today you turn 1. I watched you from across the street as your mother held your birthday party in the backyard. You were wearing that pink dress your grandmother bought. You smashed your cake with both hands and laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I wanted so badly to be there, to hold you, to tell you Daddy loves you, but I can't. Not yet. Maybe someday. Stay strong, little one. Love always, Dad. Tears blurred the words. Raleigh scrolled through more. Her 8th birthday. Her 13th, just after her mother died. Her high school graduation. Her acceptance to the Naval Academy. Each one a window into the father she thought was gone. Each one proof that he'd been there, watching, caring, breaking his own heart to keep her safe. She opened the one from 2013, her 24th birthday. Today you graduated BUD/S. I sat in the last row of the stands, wearing a ball cap and sunglasses so no one would recognize me. When they called your name and pinned the trident on your chest, I cried. You're the warrior I never got to be, fighting in the light instead of the shadows. You're everything I hoped you'd become. I'm so proud, little phantom. I love you more than words can say. Dad. You were there, she whispered. Always. At your BUD/S graduation, I was the man in the parking lot with the old Nationals cap. At your commander ceremony, I left the white roses on your car. Your mother's favorite flower. Raleigh scrolled to the last email, dated just 2 weeks ago. Her finger hovered over it, hesitant. Read it, Nathaniel said softly. I wrote it when the doctors told me 6 months. Wanted you to have it, no matter what happens. She opened it. Raleigh, my darling girl. If you're reading this, I'm gone. The cancer finally won what Protocol 7 started 45 years ago. But I'm not afraid. I got to see you one more time. Got to tell you I'm proud. Got to fight beside you. That's more than I ever hoped for. Remember this. SEALs never truly die. We live on in the warriors we inspire. You inspired me to come out of the shadows. Now inspire others to stand in the light. I love you, little phantom. Always have. Always will. Hoo-yah, Dad. Raleigh couldn't breathe. She handed the phone back, tears streaming. Don't, she managed. Don't talk like you're already gone. I'm not gone yet, sweetheart. We still have work to do. They drove in silence for a while, heading into the mountains where Nathaniel had spent decades in hiding, where 3 other dying warriors waited, all of them ready to fight one last battle. As the sun rose over the Blue Ridge Mountains, painting the sky gold and crimson, Raleigh felt something she hadn't felt in 36 years. She felt like she had a family again, and together they were going to make the bastards pay. The safe house was exactly what Raleigh expected from a man who'd spent 45 years living off the grid. A cabin that looked abandoned from the outside, weathered wood siding, and a sagging porch that suggested nobody had lived there in decades. But the solar panels on the roof told a different story, as did the reinforced door frames and windows that were definitely bulletproof. Inside was a tactical operations center that would have made any SEAL team jealous. Computer equipment lined one wall, multiple monitors showing news feeds and encrypted communications channels. Weapons racks held enough firepower to equip a small platoon. Maps covered another wall, marked with locations, dates, and names in red ink. And sitting at a table cleaning weapons were 3 men who looked like they'd walked out of history itself. They stood as Nathaniel entered, old habits and military bearing that never quite went away, even after decades. These weren't just veterans. These were warriors who'd stared death in the face so many times they'd stopped counting. Gentlemen, Nathaniel said, this is my daughter, Commander Raleigh Thorne, and Colonel Garrett Blackwood. They're part of the team now. The first man was tall and lean, in his 70s but still moving like someone 20 years younger. His hands trembled slightly as he extended one for a handshake, the fingers twisted by arthritis that looked painful. Sergeant Major Kane Bishop, Delta Force retired. Explosives were my specialty back when I had working hands. He held up those gnarled fingers. Protocol 7 attacks the joints first, but my brain still remembers every formula, every detonation sequence. I can't tie my own shoes anymore, but I can still blow a door off its hinges. The second man was shorter, stockier, with gray hair buzzed military short. He had the weathered look of someone who'd spent years in harsh environments. Master Chief Wyatt Stryker, SEAL Team 2. I can still drive like hell even if my kidneys are shot to pieces. He gestured to a dialysis machine in the corner. 3 times a week, 4 hours at a time, but between sessions, I'm good to go. The third man was the oldest, maybe 76, but his eyes were sharp as broken glass. He moved slowly, carefully, like every step required concentration. Gunnery Sergeant Finn Marlowe, Marine Force Recon, sniper. He gestured to a rifle case leaning against the wall. 487 confirmed kills across 3 wars. Brain tumors giving me double vision now, but I've learned to compensate. One of those 2 images is always the real target. Raleigh shook hands with each of them, feeling the tremors, seeing the yellow tinge of organ failure in some of their eyes. These men were dying, not might die someday. They were actively in the process of dying, their bodies breaking down from the inside out. And yet they stood ready to fight. "Hoo-yah," she said softly. "Hoo-yah," they echoed. Blackwood spread the files they'd taken from Vance's office across the table. Kane pulled on reading glasses with those twisted hands, studying the documents with the intensity of someone who'd spent a lifetime analyzing intelligence. "Authorization chain stops at Flynn," he said, "but there's a reference here. Per Pentagon approval, file SD7. SD, Blackwood said, Secretary of Defense, or someone in that office. "We need Vance," Raleigh said. "He's the weak link. Get him to confess on record, and we bypass the classification issues." "Vance won't talk willingly," Blackwood countered. "Then we make him unwilling to keep silent," Stryker said. Nathaniel shook his head. "Too risky. The moment Vance disappears, they'll destroy everything. We need to move faster than that." "How fast?" Raleigh asked. "We grab Vance, get his confession, and go public within 12 hours. Give them no time to prepare." Kane was looking at his phone. "Problem. Vance has been moved to Facility 7 Delta, CIA black site, 30 miles from here." "Then we go in and get him," Raleigh said. Nathaniel looked at his daughter with something like pride. "We go as a team. Kane blows the power. Finn provides overwatch. We infiltrate, extract Vance, and get out." "Tonight," Raleigh said. "Every hour we wait, they're moving pieces." "Agreed," Nathaniel said. "Gear up, full tactical." They spent the afternoon preparing. As the sun set over the Blue Ridge Mountains, they gathered for a final briefing. "Rules of engagement," Nathaniel said. "CIA personnel are Americans. Non-lethal where possible. But if it's you or them, you choose you. Clear?" "Clear," everyone responded. They activated comms. Phantom, Ironside, Boom, Wheels, Hawkeye, Watcher. "Insertion in 3 hours," Nathaniel said. Raleigh found herself unable to sit still. Nathaniel sat beside her. "Talk to me," he said quietly. "I don't know what to say." He pulled out his phone again, showing her the folder of emails. "I've been proud of you every single day. You became everything I hoped you'd be." Tears were streaming down Raleigh's face now. "I forgive you," she said, "for staying away. I understand now." Nathaniel pulled her into a hug, and for the first time in 36 years, Raleigh felt truly safe. At 10 p.m., they moved out. 2 vehicles. Facility 7 Delta was surrounded by forest and warning signs. They parked a mile out and covered the remaining distance on foot with night vision goggles. Through her NVGs, Raleigh could see the facility clearly. 3 buildings, perimeter fence, guard tower, floodlights sweeping. "Hawkeye, you're up," Nathaniel said. Finn was in position, 900 yards out. "Copy. I have eyes on 2 roving patrols." "Boom, ready when you are." Kane had the power junction wired. "Charges set. On your mark, Ironside." "Mark in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, execute." The explosion was muffled. The floodlights died. Emergency lighting kicked on. "Move," Nathaniel commanded. They approached through a pre-cut fence section, moving in tactical formation. 2 tangos responding, Finn reported. They reached the service entrance. The door clicked open. Inside was a corridor lit by red emergency lights. Raleigh moved on point, weapon up. A guard appeared. She closed the distance. Combat chokehold. 10 seconds. He went limp. 1 down, non-lethal. They found the basement stairwell. Kane placed a shaped charge on the door. "Fire in the hole!" The charge detonated. They pulled the door aside and moved into the basement. 6 cells, 5 empty. The 6th held Dr. Edmund Vance, blood-stained and terrified. He looked up as they entered, relief in his eyes. "Commander Thorne, come to kill me?" "Come to save you, whether you deserve it or not." She shot the lock off. Nathaniel stepped forward. "Thorne? Nathaniel Thorne? But you're dead." "Yeah, I get that a lot. Edmund, it's been a long time. On your feet." They moved back up. The building was coming alive. Voices, footsteps, weapons being readied. "Thunder, we need an exit. North side service door." They changed direction. A guard appeared ahead. This time there was no sneaking up. Raleigh fired first. 2 shots center mass. The guard went down. "Contact. Lethal force engaged." They ran now. Kane kicked open the service door. Immediately gunfire erupted. "Hawkeye, I need that tower guard down." Long pause, then Finn's voice, regretful. "Copy." The rifles report. The tower guard dropped. "Tower neutralized." They ran for the fence, half carrying Vance. More guards poured out. Finn provided covering fire. Stryker brought the Humvee roaring up. They dove in, already moving. Behind them, the facility disappeared into darkness. Back at the cabin, they secured Vance in a holding cell. Then they debriefed. "Casualties?" Nathaniel asked. "1 lethal," Finn said quietly. "The tower guard. No other option." "Understood. Not your fault, Finn." "Vance?" Blackwood asked. "Terrified but ready to talk," Kane replied. They brought Vance out. He sat, hands zip-tied, looking at the 6 operators. "I'll tell you everything," he said immediately, "but I need protection. Flynn will kill me." "Start with Project Lazarus," Nathaniel said. Vance took a breath. 1979. Pentagon wanted an edge for Iran. Biochemical enhancement based on Soviet research that had killed every test subject. "We thought we'd fixed it. We were wrong." He looked at Nathaniel. 50 operators, including you, Captain. By 1981, cellular breakdown. No cure. Flynn ordered restart in 1989. Desert Storm. 500 more men. "How many have you killed?" Nathaniel asked. 11, at Walter Reed. All Protocol 7 subjects. All on Flynn's list. "Who authorized this at the Pentagon?" "I don't know the name. Flynn kept it compartmentalized. But there are SD7 files at CIA headquarters." Kane was at his computer. "I can hack Langley, but it'll take 48 hours. "We don't have 48 hours, Raleigh said. She had an idea. "We don't hack in. We force Flynn's hand. We leak Vance's confession online, post it everywhere, make it impossible to suppress. Flynn will panic, contact his superiors. We track where he runs." Nathaniel considered. "Once we go public, we're fully committed. No going back." "There's no going back anyway, Dad. We go public now, or we die in the shadows." One by one, the dying warriors nodded. Then we do it, Nathaniel said. Kane, set up recording equipment. For the next 3 hours, they recorded everything. Vance's confession, the documentation, medical records, kill orders with Flynn's signature. They compiled it into a comprehensive file. At 3 a.m., they uploaded it to 20 sites simultaneously. WikiLeaks, news outlets, social media, congressional staffers. The file was named Project Lazarus, the CIA's murder of American warriors. Within 20 minutes, it started trending. Within an hour, breaking news alerts. By dawn, top headline across America. The story was out, the truth spreading faster than Flynn could suppress it. At the cabin, Nathaniel poured coffee and raised his cup. To the warriors who didn't make it, and to the ones still fighting. Hoo-yah, they responded. But Raleigh knew the war wasn't over. The reckoning had only just begun. The calls started at 6 a.m. Senator Elizabeth Crane, chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, FBI director, White House chief of staff. Everyone wanted to know if the Project Lazarus files were real. Nathaniel fielded the calls. Senator Crane, this is Captain Nathaniel Thorne. Yes, ma'am, I've been legally dead for 45 years. And yes, every word in those files is true. He listened. We have Dr. Vance in protective custody. He's willing to testify, but we need security guarantees. More listening. Then Nathaniel smiled grimly. That would be acceptable, Senator. When can you have them here? He hung up. Senator Crane is sending Marines, full company strength. They'll be here in 3 hours to provide protection and escort us to Washington. Marines? Stryker said. Hell, we might actually survive this. Don't celebrate yet, Blackwood said, pointing at the news. On screen was a press conference. Deputy Director Marcus Flynn, behind a podium with the CIA seal, looking calm and composed. The documents released online this morning are a mix of authentic files and fabricated propaganda, Flynn was saying. Yes, Project Lazarus was a real medical research program in the 1990s, but it was discontinued when early results proved inconclusive. The allegations of murder are completely false. He's good, Kane muttered. It won't work, Raleigh said. We have Vance. We have medical records. We have bodies with Protocol 7 in their systems. Nathaniel pulled up a tracking program on his tablet. I put a trace on Flynn's phone last night. Let's see who he's calling. The list was illuminating. Flynn had made 17 calls in the past hour, most to CIA officials. But 3 calls stood out, all to the same number, a Pentagon extension. Kane traced it. Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. That's Gerald Ashford, former CIA Deputy Director himself. That's our architect, Nathaniel said. Ashford created Project Lazarus. Flynn executed the cleanup. Before they could discuss further, Finn called out from his position on the roof. Movement on the access road. Multiple vehicles. Black SUVs. Everyone grabbed weapons and moved to defensive positions. Through the window, Raleigh counted 6 SUVs, at least 20 hostiles. CIA, Nathaniel said. Flynn's making his move. The vehicle stopped 200 yards from the cabin. Doors opened. Armed men poured out. Not in tactical gear, but in suits with body armor underneath. A bullhorn crackled. This is Deputy Director Flynn. You are surrounded. Send out Dr. Vance and surrender. You will not be harmed. Nathaniel grabbed his own radio. This is Master Chief Thorne. We have a Marine security detail en route. Any action against us is an act of war against the United States Marine Corps. Stand down. Flynn's voice came back. Your Marines are 2 hours away. We're here now. Last chance. Raleigh moved to a window, assessing. 6 SUVs in a semicircle. 20-plus hostiles, all armed. We hold until the Marines arrive, Nathaniel said. Hawkeye, you're free to engage at will. Copy. The standoff lasted 10 seconds. Then Flynn ordered his men to advance. Finn's rifle spoke once. The lead contractor dropped. Spoke again. Another down. Flynn's men scattered, taking cover behind vehicles. They returned fire, but Finn was 900 yards away on elevated ground. Boom! Give them something to think about, Nathaniel ordered. Kane had been preparing for this. He triggered a remote charge near the lead SUV. The vehicle exploded in a ball of flame. Thunder, sit rep on those Marines. Still 90 minutes out, Blackwood replied. But I've got something better. I called in a favor. We've got a Predator drone overhead. Everyone looked up. Armed? Nathaniel asked. Hellfire missiles. 2 of them. And the operator is very interested in protecting American citizens from illegal CIA action. Nathaniel grabbed the radio again. Deputy Director Flynn, we have a Predator drone overhead, armed with Hellfire missiles. If your men don't withdraw in 60 seconds, that drone is going to turn your vehicles into scrap metal. Long silence. Then reluctantly, fall back. The contractors retreated to their vehicles and pulled out, leaving 2 dead and 1 vehicle burning. But Raleigh knew this wasn't over. Flynn was too committed. We need to move, she said. Flynn knows where we are now. Agreed, Nathaniel said. Wheels, get the vehicles ready. The Marines arrived exactly on schedule. A convoy of armored vehicles with a full company. Their commanding officer, Captain James Reeves, approached the cabin. Master Chief Thorne, Captain Reeves, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines. Senator Crane sends her regards. We're here to make sure you get to Washington alive. Good to see the Corps is still the best, Nathaniel said. They loaded into the Marine convoy, Vance in an armored vehicle with 4 guards. The team split between other vehicles. The drive to Washington took 3 hours. They went straight to Joint Base Andrews, where Senator Hayes was waiting with half the Senate. She was a striking woman in her 60s, former Army colonel herself, wearing a power suit and the bearing of someone who'd seen combat and earned respect the hard way. Master Chief Thorne, she said, offering her hand. I've been waiting 20 years for someone to expose Project Lazarus. Senator, you knew about it? Raleigh asked. Suspected, had fragments, never enough to act on. You've given us everything we need. She looked at the team. All of you, you're heroes, whether the government wants to admit it or not. We're not heroes, Nathaniel said quietly. We're survivors. The heroes are the ones who died because the CIA poisoned them. Senator Crane nodded grimly. Then let's make sure their deaths mean something. The Senate Intelligence Committee is convening in 2 hours. Emergency session, public testimony, live coverage. Dr. Vance will testify. So will you, Captain. And Commander Thorne, I'd like you there as well. Before Raleigh could respond, a disturbance at the perimeter. More vehicles arriving. But these weren't Marine. They were CIA. And stepping out of the lead vehicle was Deputy Director Marcus Flynn himself. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired, wearing an expensive suit. He walked toward them with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no. Senator Crane, he said smoothly, I need to speak with you about the custody of Dr. Vance. He's a CIA asset involved in classified programs. His testimony will expose criminal activity, Crane shot back. With respect, Senator, I have a federal court order. Flynn produced a document. Judge Morrison has ruled that Vance must be returned to CIA custody pending classified review. Morrison is a Reagan appointee who's been in the CIA's pocket for 40 years, Crane said. That order isn't worth the paper it's printed on. It's still a legal order, which I'm choosing to ignore on grounds of national security. Crane stepped closer to Flynn. You're not taking Vance. You're not silencing these men. And if you try, I'll have the Marines arrest you for obstruction of justice. Flynn's composure cracked slightly. His eyes went to Nathaniel, to Raleigh, to the other survivors. This isn't over, Senator. Yes, Nathaniel said quietly. It is. Flynn turned and left, but Raleigh saw the calculation in his eyes. He wasn't done yet. At 2 p.m., they moved to the Capitol building under Marine escort. The Senate Intelligence Committee hearing room was packed. Senators, staff, reporters, cameras. This wasn't just a hearing, it was a reckoning. Senator Crane called the session to order. We are here to investigate allegations regarding Project Lazarus. Dr. Edmund Vance has agreed to testify under oath. Vance was sworn in. He looked small behind the witness table. Dr. Vance, Crane began, tell this committee what Project Lazarus was. For the next 20 minutes, Vance laid out everything. The origins in 1979, the Soviet research, the testing on American service members, the deadly side effects, and most damning, the decision to eliminate witnesses. Deputy Director Flynn personally ordered the deaths of 11 veterans under my care, Vance said, his voice shaking. He provided the chemical compounds and specific instructions. When Vance finished, Crane called Nathaniel to testify. The old Master Chief walked to the witness table with his head high, still carrying himself like the warrior he'd always been. He was sworn in and sat down. Captain Thorne, Crane said gently, you've been legally dead for 45 years. Can you explain how that happened? I was one of the original test subjects for Protocol 7, Nathaniel began. In 1981, I started showing symptoms. I investigated and discovered what the CIA had done. I was scheduled to testify before Congress in 1980, but the night before, I received a credible threat. Someone I trusted told me the CIA was planning to kill me. So you faked your death? Yes, ma'am. I watched from the shadows as Protocol 7 killed my brothers. Watched as the CIA murdered anyone who asked questions. And I gathered evidence, waiting for the right moment. At great personal cost, you lost your family. Nathaniel's voice broke. My wife couldn't handle the grief of thinking I was dead. She took her own life. And my daughter grew up believing her father had abandoned her. That's the price I paid for staying alive, for getting to this moment. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Senator Crane called Raleigh next. She testified about her investigation, the pattern of deaths, the conspiracy to cover up Project Lazarus. My father knew the truth, she said, and I believe they killed him to keep him quiet. Except he didn't die. He survived. And together we're making sure the truth comes out. She pulled out Nathaniel's phone. These are 36 emails my father wrote to me over 45 years. One for every birthday. Never sent because it wasn't safe. But he was always there, watching, hoping, waiting for the day we could fight this together. She read one aloud. The BUD/S graduation email. When she finished, the chamber was silent. Many were crying. By the time the hearing ended, the story was clear. The CIA had experimented on American soldiers, poisoned them, and then murdered them to hide the evidence. This committee will be issuing subpoenas, Crane announced. We want Deputy Director Flynn, Undersecretary Ashford, and everyone else involved. And I'm calling for the appointment of a special prosecutor to bring criminal charges. As they left the hearing room, reporters swarmed, but the Marines kept them at bay. Outside, Raleigh saw something that made her stop. The FBI was arresting Marcus Flynn. Right there, live on television. Handcuffs, Miranda rights, the whole thing. Flynn's career was over. His freedom was over. His life as he knew it was over. 3 days later, Undersecretary Gerald Ashford resigned and was subsequently arrested on similar charges. One by one, everyone involved in Project Lazarus was exposed. Some resigned, some were fired, some were arrested. The president issued a formal apology to all Protocol 7 victims and their families. Congress authorized a $750 million compensation fund. Medical research teams began working on treatments for the genetic damage. It was justice. Not perfect, not complete, but it was something. 6 months later, on a cold February morning, Captain Nathaniel Thorne passed away peacefully in his sleep at the cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. He was 75 years old. He died at home, surrounded by family. Raleigh, the 3 surviving warriors who'd fought beside him, and a sense of peace he hadn't known in 45 years. The funeral was held at Arlington National Cemetery, full military honors, flag-draped casket, honor guard in dress uniforms, a 21-gun salute that echoed across the hallowed ground. Raleigh stood at attention in her dress uniform as they played taps. Her eyes were dry, her back straight. She was a SEAL captain honoring a fallen Master Chief. The grief would come later, in private moments. But here now she would be strong. Senator Crane gave the eulogy. Captain Nathaniel Thorne served 3 tours of duty. His first in Iran, though the world never knew it. His second in the shadows, protecting his family the only way he could. And his third in the light, exposing the truth that cost him everything. He won all 3. The honor guard folded the flag with precise, practiced movements. They presented it to Raleigh. She accepted it with both hands, pressed it to her chest. As the ceremony ended, an elderly woman approached. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "Captain Thorne, I'm Margaret Marlowe, Finn's widow." Raleigh shook her hand. "Ma'am, your husband was a hero. So was your father." Margaret pressed something into Raleigh's palm. "Finn wanted you to have this. He gave it to me before he passed last month." Raleigh looked down. It was a challenge coin. SEAL Team 1 on one side. On the back, an inscription. "The only easy day was yesterday." "He said to tell you that the fight never ends, but neither does the brotherhood. You're not alone in this." Margaret squeezed Raleigh's hand and walked away. Raleigh stood there with the coin warm against her palm, tears finally breaking through her composure. She wasn't alone. She had her brothers and sisters in arms. She had the legacy her father left behind. And she had purpose. 3 years later, Commander Raleigh Thorne stood on the beach at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado, watching the sunrise over the Pacific. She was 39 years old now, promoted to captain, assigned as senior instructor at BUD/S. Her job was to train the next generation of SEALs. BUD/S candidates ran PT on the beach, their instructors shouting cadence. Young warriors preparing for the hardest training in the military. One candidate caught Raleigh's attention. A woman, barely 5'2", struggling to keep up with the men in her boat crew. Every time she fell behind, she dug deeper, fought harder, caught up. After the run, Raleigh pulled her aside. "What's your name?" "Hernandez, ma'am. Petty officer, 2nd class." "Why are you here, Hernandez?" "To be a SEAL, ma'am." "Why?" The young woman hesitated. "My grandfather, Marines, Quezon. He always told me to be stronger than I think I am. He passed 2 years ago. I'm doing this for him." Raleigh reached into her pocket, pulled out 2 sets of dog tags, her own from 2013 and her father's from 1979. Tarnished copper worn smooth by decades. "See these? My father never saw me graduate BUD/S, but he was there, in the shadows, watching, believing." "Who's watching you?" Hernandez's eyes welled up. "My grandfather, ma'am." "Then make him proud. Get back in there." "Yes, ma'am." Hernandez ran back to her boat crew, pushing harder than before. Raleigh stood on the beach as the sun climbed higher. 2 dog tags caught the light, gleaming against her chest, and in her mind she heard her father's voice. The final email. The one she'd read 100 times since his death. "Raleigh, my darling girl. If you're reading this, I'm gone. But SEALs never truly die. We live on in the warriors we inspire. You inspired me to come out of the shadows. Now inspire others to stand in the light. The only easy day was yesterday. I love you, little phantom. Always have, always will. Hoo-yah, Dad." Raleigh looked out at the Pacific, at the endless horizon where sea met sky. "Hoo-yah, Dad," she whispered, and she turned back toward the training compound, toward the next generation of warriors, toward the future her father had fought so hard to give her. The reckoning was complete, But the mission would never end. Because that's what warriors did. They fought, they sacrificed, they inspired, and they never, ever gave up.